What we're going to do, we're going to go through your course out and we're going to go talk about what you guys need to do in terms of the work and where you should be right about now. We're also going to show you today how to log on to Moodle so you can access the Monday morning theory things that we are talking about. You can also, there's also stuff there from the Year 12s, our tutorials, which are on direction and things like that. And so if you, once we start getting to that point where your exam is, I'll be pointing to you to those tutorials because they're going to fill in the information that you need to know when you're answering questions for your Stage 2 exam. Remembering that your exam is only this year if you choose to do Stage 1 next year. You only have to do your exams this year. So I'm sorry about that, but that's life. Okay, now if you open your programs, now I'm going to have two programs in front of me, so bear with me. I've got the Stage 3 program and the Stage 2 program. Now, Stage 2s, if you look on page, which is probably the third page, where are we? Okay, it's probably a little bit further on, but I'm going to get you guys started on this anyway. Task 1 Part B, yeah, okay, that's, if you guys go to page 6, right, which is down the bottom, and you'll see week 13, it's got a section called Task 1B, this is in week 12, Task 1 Part B monologue, and for Stage 3s, it's you, that's week 1, Task 1 Part B monologue. Okay, for your exam, you guys are all performing a monologue, a published monologue. So not a monologue that you've written, but a monologue that we've actually found on the net. What I'm going to give you all next week is a link to monologues, and you guys will have to start finding your monologue that you're going to do for your exam. What we're going to do over the next few weeks is every now and then we're going to do a monologue session in here. We're going to teach you how to deconstruct a monologue and how to do that in terms of how you build a character. Okay, so we'll be doing that with you because that's something that you need to know for your exams. You need to sort of start looking at a monologue because that's going to be the monologue, Sally, that you will be using all the way through to your WACE exam. Okay, same monologue. So you pick, no, that's your OSP. It's your original solo production. Okay, all right. Okay, so more about that next week, but I will give you the links, and once you've got the links, you will need to find your monologue. Your monologue will go between up to 2 minutes, so basically it's usually between about 1 minute 30 to 2 minutes, right? And that will be your exam monologue for your Stage 2 exam in Term 2.
But don't I have to have it longer, or is that just
Yours is longer. Yours is between 2 and 3 minutes. Okay.
Like 7.
Yeah. So now, where we are in terms of your course. Stage 2s, if you turn to page 3, which is the second page, and Sally, if you turn to page 2, right, which is your second page, you'll notice that there is a task there called Task 1 Part C, Production Role, and for the Stage 2s, there's also Task 1 Part D, which is Design Role. Okay, now, these are two things that you're going to have to complete, okay? Now, the way it works is normally in a production, all of you would be asked to do a specific production role, okay? So if we were doing a normal production down in our drama and each of you would be responsible for something, whether it be ticketing, sales, stage design, costume, whatever. With this play, it's a little bit different because it's a musical and because I have a production crew, then that production crew will be taking care of all that. However, you will still need to do the work associated with a production as if you were going to be performing that role for the production, okay? So, in your particular case, the work that you're doing is actually for face-to-face. So it's as if you were going to stage face-to-face in a production, okay? Now, there are about 2 or 3 production roles that you guys can look at. You can look at costume, you can look at set, and you can look at sound, you can look at lighting, or you can look at a role called the dramaturge. Obviously you can't look at director because I'm the director. Okay? And these are the various production roles that are out there. Okay? There are others. There's stage manager, there's front of house, there's all these other bits and pieces. But because, you know, none of that's really relevant for you in terms of there's not much work associated with it, there's no point in actually doing it. Now, most of you would know what costume is all about. Most of you would know what set is all about. By the way, these are commonly referred to, these two are commonly referred to under the design blanket. Okay? They're just called design. Right? So it can be lighting design, costume design or set design. Your sound for a play is not called sound, it's usually called soundscape. Alright? They talk about a soundscape for a play, not just sound for a play. Okay? It's important to know the terminology because if you're in your exam and it says what soundscape would you use for this and you go, what soundscape? I have no idea, I know it's got sound in it. Soundscape is basically how you would produce all the sound for the play. Alright? I mean, we know what landscape is. You look at landscape, you think, well, that's everything in front of you in terms of land. Soundscape is the same thing. It's everything that people would hear from the minute that the play begins. Sound includes mood music. Your particular play, for example, Rome Sweet Rome, it includes background music, it includes people singing, and it also includes your actual voice production. That is part of sound. Now, for this play, because you guys are going to be using lapel mics, little mics tucked into your togas with a little radio thing behind you so that people can hear you, then that's something that we need to take into account for this production, all right? Because it's a large-scale production, all right? Costume is obvious, lighting is obvious, and then dramaturge. Dramaturge is the one that you've probably never heard of. Dramaturge is a person who works very closely with the director to research the play. They do all the research on the play before the director actually talks to anybody else. The director talks to the dramaturge reasonably first, okay? Because the dramaturge's job is to find out all about the time period. It needs to find out what people were wearing, what people were doing, what was going on at the time, what was the economic context like, what was the social thing like, how did people live. That's a dramaturge's job. How did people interact with each other? Was there a class structure? You know that some societies had a class structure. Roman society had a class structure. Indian society today still has a very strong class structure. So, you know, a dramaturge's job is to find that out because that's going to form the basis of how this play is going to be interpreted. Because if you look at a play, if you know what the time period was like and the writer was from that time period, then you can say, okay, well, this is what influenced the writer to actually do what they did, to write what they did. If we look at Rome Sweet Rome, of course, that was not written in Roman times. That was written, you know, in the 80s by a thing, and obviously the focus behind that particular play is a little bit different to what the focus would be if you read a traditional Roman theatre text. So that's what a dramaturge does. And the whole point to the dramaturge is to assist the director to develop what we call a director's vision. All right? Every director has a vision. All right? It's how they actually see the play and how that play is going to look when it's on stage. So for this play, for example, I have a vision of how that play is going to look. I've made decisions in terms of costuming. I'm making decisions in terms of the way we're going to perform it. These are all decisions a director makes. That's part of their vision. Okay, because at the end of the day, I'm responsible for making sure that what we produce has entertainment value. That's my job. Now, generally when a director is developing a vision for a play, what they tend to do is they obviously read the script and then they decide how they're going to actually interpret that script. And this is really important because, okay, obviously everybody reads the script and everybody says, well, that's what it's about. But when it comes to an interpretation, like for a stage, it actually goes a lot further than that. Because it's one thing to read a script and say, well, this is what the play is about. It's another thing to take that script from the text and actually place that on the stage. It's a completely different world. All right, now to do that, directors need to interpret the play for the audience, and they need to decide how they're going to interpret it. So, for example, a director might say, look, I think this play, for me, is a highly emotionally charged play. So what I'm going to focus on in my interpretation is emotion. I'm going to look at power and the emotion between people in relationships, the conflict. I'm going to focus really hard on that. So, knowing that, then he's going to say, well, so other things aren't as important for me. The set isn't going to be as important for me because I don't want people to be, to look at the set and be overawed by the set. I want people to focus on the characters and I want people to focus on the emotion. So that's going to really, going to affect what choices that director makes in terms of set and in terms of the way he lights it, because he wants to concentrate on emotion. That's the mood he wants to build. Knowing that, that's going to then, of course, it's going to weigh very heavily on the actors, because the actors are going to have to say, well, okay, the directors decide that we are going to have a highly charged emotional interpretation of the script. So for an actor, that means that they have to say, well, we're obviously not going to be very traditional in characterisation. We're not going to produce the obvious characters that are here. We're going to produce characters that are going to be physically and emotionally more powerful than probably what we would normally have to do. So that's what the actors need to prepare themselves for when they're going to go and work with the director. They've got to work in with this idea that it's going to be an emotional outpouring and it's going to be powerful and it's going to be, full on. Because that's the director's vision. That's how the director's interpreted the play. The director might decide, no, I don't want to do that. What I want to do is I want to focus very heavily on the time period. I want to be authentic. I want the costumes to be absolutely perfect in terms of time period. I want the sets to be splendid and to reflect exactly the time period. I want to take that audience and I want to transport them back to the time period of that play. If that's his interpretation, then once again, everything changes. Suddenly there's more is put onto the set design people because they have to be exact. More is put onto the costume design because it has to be exact. So suddenly the whole world of how the play is going to be produced changes because the directors decided on this interpretation. Their vision is this. And all of a sudden it changes for the actors because no longer are they concerning themselves with a physical, emotional outpouring. Instead, they're focusing on perfect characterisation for that time period. So they have to look at how did people speak? What kind of things did they do with their voice? Where were the stresses? How did they walk? What sorts of things did they do with their body? How did they use their gestures? So suddenly, the character's world changes, the actor's world changes, because it's a completely different interpretation. So that's all this is interlinked. And director is a production role, but all this stuff is interlinked and all comes down to what the vision of the director is going to be. So whatever role, you decide to choose, it will depend on that. Now, if we look at you guys and what you need to do for your production task, you need to pick one of those roles. And you need to pick one of those roles for Rome, Sweet Rome. Okay? Now, knowing that my vision for this play is to entertain, and knowing that my vision for this play is to make people laugh, right? Knowing that, then that should influence what you choose to do in terms of set and in terms of sound and costume and so forth. And obviously, if you look at the script, there are so many scene changes that if you were doing set design, you would have to say, well, how am I going to create all those different scenes? How am I going to create Nero's room? How am I going to create the village for Boadicea? How am I going to create the inmates? How am I going to do that with set? What would I need to do with set to be able to continually change the mood and the scene? Right? So if you decide to do set design as your production role, you need to think, how am I going to do that? Knowing that we're staging it up there in the gym, knowing that we're going to be building a stage. You look down at the gym, we're going to be having the normal stage with the curtains there. We're going to cut it in half, and then we're going to have a stage built out front. Right? We're going to cut it in half so we can use the back part of this and we can move around and do stuff. But then we're going to have a big stage at the front. This is going to be about 8 metres by about 7 metres. Maybe that might be even 10, depending on how big. But that's going to be a pretty serious stage. It's going to be huge, right? This stage at the front. Basically, Does anyone know the reason why I need to do that?
So, it has something to do with the thrust stage.
No. Why am I doing this? Shelby? No, why am I doing this? Why do I need a stage that big? What is going on during this performance?
You need pops, dancers, basically.
Dancers. It's the dancers. Those dancers, if it wasn't for those dancers, I could have a smaller stage. But those dancers need space. So we're going to give them some space. So, you know, part of my vision has affected the size of the stage because I've spoken to my partner, which is Miss Fit. She's doing the dance. And I've said, what do you need? And she said, I need this. So suddenly, my vision has changed in terms of how I'm going to stage this. All right? So what you need to do if you decide to do one of these roles is you need to kind of work that out. Okay, so now in terms of your assessment for this piece, the production role, Part C and Part D, are going to be interlinked. Okay? If you look at Part C, where's Part C? If you look at Part C, your job is to, once you've got your production role, your job is to bring it to the point where it can be actually done on stage. So what I'm going to do with you guys, if you turn to page 16, normally what you would need to do with this is that you would need to be able to visually see your role. So obviously if you're doing costume, it wouldn't be that hard to visually see your role because everybody would be wearing the costumes that you came up with. If you're doing set design, then it would be hard for people to see that either because there'd be your ideas in the set design. Okay? However, because all that's been taken care of, none of that's going to be highly visual. So, Task C, Part C is going to be all about preparing for that. So what you would need to do. So if you were doing costume, you'd research costume. Next we're going to give information on costume. You'd research costume, the sorts of bits and pieces that you would need to put together for a costume for the cast, right? Different types of togans that you might need, what Bodhisattva might look like, and so forth. So that would be part of the costume. If you were doing lighting, then once again you would need to you would need to say, well, these are the lights that I need. So you need to research the different types of lights that are out there and what they can do, and then therefore, you know, do that. If you're doing dramaturge, then what you need to do is present to me like a vision of Rome at that particular time, right? On what was going on in Rome during Nero's time. And there's plenty of information on that. So that's what you would need to do, okay? And then what I will do, and then for Part D, which is design, you would need to, obviously if your sound is probably the one that you probably shouldn't really worry about because I don't think you can really prove that. Sound you're not really going to be able to prove, but all of this you can. So for Part D, you're going to show me your designs. So what your costume designs would be, what your set designs would be, what your lighting design would be. Now people say, well, how do you do a lighting design? Lighting designs are really not very difficult, but it comes down to what sort of lights you've got. So if you say, I've got this kind of light here, it's going to create a yellow wash across here, you would need to be able to show me that, okay? And you would need to be able to show me the different designs. So you come up with a template of the stage and you say, okay, in scene 1, this is what I would require. In scene 2, this is what we'd be doing. In scene 3, this is what lights I would be using. So you do a full lighting design. That's for Part D. All right, so the whole point to this, while it might seem to you that it's a bit of work, it actually isn't. You actually have 9, well, it's weeks. I consider this to be week 3 because week 1 we didn't really do much week 1. So to me, this is week 3. In week 9, what you will need to do is that's when you need to put this stuff to me. That's when you need to hand it in. So you have, you know, a good solid 5 or 6 weeks to do this. But you need to kind of like start today, and I'll give you time on Mondays to do this, right? To sort of work towards it. So it's producing a project, okay? At the same time, I will give you the links to your monologues and so forth, and you'll be able to look at that. Now, in terms of assessment for Part C, I'm going to interview you. Okay? For Part C, I'm going to interview you, and you're going to talk me through what you would be doing. Okay? So you're going to explain to me what you're doing. So you have all your information, and then I say, okay, well, so for example, with costume, say, okay, so what are you doing with costume? Why did you choose this role? why did you choose this costume for Tartina? And you're going to explain to me why you chose that for her. Or why did you dress Nero like this? You're going to explain to me why Nero is dressed like that. I'll make it easy for you. I won't ask you to do every character. I'll ask you to do like 3 main characters. All right, that makes life really easy. Does that make sense? So you don't have to do every single character in the thing. Just 3 main characters. It might be Nero, Tartina, Boadicea. It might be 2 gladiators, or a gladiator, a temple maiden, and Nero, or it might be Cassandra. Temple maiden and amnesia. So you pick any of the main characters and just do those 3 costumes. And then I'll ask you questions on that. If you're doing set design, I'll say, well, why did you choose this set design? Why have you made this like this? And it's just a conversation, and you're going to sort of tell me why that is, okay? And we're going to set up a series of periods where you can do that. Okay, so it's supposed to be reasonably low threshold. It's not supposed to be too painful in terms of how you produce your assessment for this. But please know, everything that you do is absolutely 100% relevant for your exam. Nothing that I'm asking you to do here is not information that you are not going to be able to use in your exam. Every bit of it, all right? Because you will get a question on a production role in the first part of your exam and how you would interpret that for a particular script extract. So if you know all about lighting, then you'll be able to do that. If you know all about set, physical spaces and the way they work, you'll be able to do that. All right? So it's very important that you understand that nothing here is irrelevant. Everything here is absolutely relevant. Okay? Does that make sense to you? All right. What we're also going to do now, because you guys, then I'm going to let you get on with your physical spaces, but I'm going to ask you all to log on because I'm going to take you through the Moodle log on so that all of you know how to log on to Moodle. Because in the next couple of weeks, I've already started posting the theory sessions, but the next couple of weeks I'm going to start posting the tasks and any information that we can use for that.